Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to make myself a promise. And so you can always go back to this video to see whether or not I keep my promise. I'm going to get on here and make a video every day and just blab. Mr. Beast talked about it, right? That's all he did, is just promised himself that he was just going to get on YouTube. Now, I might not necessarily agree that all of us should have to go through YouTube to talk to each other, but it's the platform we've all been given. It's the one that most everybody's watching. So that's why there's so many YouTube videos that just constantly advertise how to, rate or get your YouTube channel up. Consistency, because eventually people just watch you every day. Because what happens is, and this is the problem with YouTube, and this is why I haven't done it, and why I understand this, is because if each of us are just living each other's lives through a box, then we are never creating together, really. So there's a spiritual warfare there, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, because we all go through it. For me personally, understanding it, which is why I'm making this video, me understanding it makes it so that you're subject to it until you learn how to transmute it. Because the bigger picture is always that things are growing closer. And this is the gravity wheel. These are the longest term cycles that we go through. Are us gradually coming closer together until we reach the center, which is our heart. Because we all come from and go back to the heart. Regardless of what kind of magnetic energy we're putting out there. Right? Magnetic forces is what enables it to exist in the first place. Right? Without a positive and negative, we couldn't have pulled ourselves apart into this toroidal thing. So, where to start? So you're always going back to the center if you're getting more part of the creative circuit. You're creating more of your environment, and you're falling into the exterior part when you're consuming more, right? You're just consuming the light out there because you're not creating light and attracting other lights to you. And the only way to attract other lights to you is to surrender to whatever it is that they need. And eventually we'll need nothing at the center. But unfortunately, we pulled ourselves apart. And so we need to come back together. It's like a never-ending process. It's the dichotomy of the universe. So if there is one creator, then who's doing the creating? Well, yeah. And what are we consuming? If we're sitting around all day watching YouTube videos, then we're just consuming YouTube videos. I mean, the powers that be would probably like us all in boxes so they could, sell us advertising and products between one another, and then be the intermediary for you and me. Why would I want an intermediary for you and me? And so when you think about the big picture, you can fall into darkness and stay isolated, and then you fall into delusion, because then eventually that delusion becomes part of the rest later on. But if you're falling in that direction, then that's the way you're going. Yeah. So ideally, you want a group of people to create together that are their own source. Understand that we are our own source. Yeah. It's like a perfect dichotomy. The only way that you can come together is when you become your own source. Because otherwise, you're just a parasite off the other. And parasites kill the hosts because it's not an equal exchange of energy. The parasite isn't really giving much back. It just wants the blood. Yeah. I hope you guys are understanding this. I'm speaking just about nature and trying to explain it in the best way possible. But so here's a really good example. And I was watching a YouTube video yesterday, which is great, and YouTube is great because it allows us to share information across a large group of people, regardless of who's profiting from it or not profiting from it. And eventually you have to accept that because it's the avenue we've been given to speak to one another as a whole. And this is why it's happening. So there's all these isolated islands out in different parts of the world that people have never gone to, and if they see them, they're very rare. So there's videos on that, the hardest to get to islands in the world. There's actually one island, it's just a piece of rock, I think, sticking out of the South Pacific, where theoretically nobody's ever been there, ever walked on it, because it's just this small rock, so far from any other rock that what would be the point of even going there? There's absolutely no reason. But there's a small island in the Faroe Islands. It's the smallest of the main islands that the locals still go to, and the only reason they go there is because there's a flock of sheep living on the top, and they have to climb this thing to go get the sheep. And it's amazing that happens. But there's one island, and there's a couple islands in the example, is that we introduced, let's say, mice to an island of albatross that ends up destroying the albatross population. So here on the macro scale, when things start to integrate, because everything's localized, if everything's its own source, it's living in its own reality until it gets exposed to something else's reality, and then it has to merge. Most of the time it looks like it's dying when it has to do that, because it has to merge together to create something new. If you look at the evolutionary record of our planet, that's pretty much what you're looking at. Different ecosystems, because you're thinking about the formation of the solar system. So things are coming together in more profound ways over time to integrate itself with itself. So it's becoming a much more complex structure to move more energy and information. And so it goes through cycles of death and rebirth. But as it rebirths, it becomes more complicated and it's moving more energy. So there is a part of us that is dying. And when we look at the planet, and people complain about what we're doing, it's happening naturally. Look at the way things are integrating. And the reason it's dying quicker is because us as a species are becoming globally conscious. So it's dying fast because everything else was localized. Everything was feeding on itself in different ways. You have different countries that are trying to feed each other off each other in different ways because there's control-based systems that were parasitic. I am not against government. It is a part of nature. There will be a beginning and an end of it. And divine government always comes from within because it follows the laws of nature. And when we're enlightened, we're going into the age of enlightenment, then we'll start obeying the rules of nature and loving each other unconditionally because we are all blind. We don't know if we have a parasite attached to us. And the extent of that goes really far. Think about Jesus' trip through the desert. The only person to really record was Moses, but going through the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights without food or water. You have to be your own creator to do that. And there must have been some processes to get him to that point that we don't hear about because, in any case, when you become your own source, then you've haven't detached, but you've just cut cords with anything that needs access to you. But then you go back, and that's what you did, because you can't separate yourself from yourself. I would love to hear the story of up to that point, where maybe someone fell into such complete detachment to really find the truth. Because if everything around you is living in a delusion, it's projecting that delusion onto its environment. And the only way to really understand where you're at and what you are is to go within. Because if everything around you doesn't understand what it is, then you really have to find out what it means to you in your heart. And that's why it's hardest on the heart, because our own barriers around the heart will limit some aspect of the Godhead bodily. Because if you are the Godhead bodily, the entire Godhead, then the only thing that's limiting that is some kind of barrier between your heart and mind. Love you guys. So we can go back to the bigger picture. We see the environment's dying because it has to come back together as one whole wholesome thing. We all want to be more whole, and there is nothing that would make me happier. And I can say this for certain. And I need to make sure that I am vocalizing it on a platform, because if I just think about it to myself, then nobody else gets to hear about it. And that's the problem. It's the ultimate truth that you run into if you've got dreams of where you would like to see this world go, and you don't share it because of fear of maybe somebody thinking negatively about you or whatever, then it'll never be spoken. And my personal dreams have always been to just share in the world around me. Because if you try and take a piece of it, then you have kind of isolated, you become a small ego, right? You think, I got to get this thing or else I'm going to die. I'm going to be exposed to the environment. But in fact, if it's all you, then why wouldn't you surrender yourself to it and think about what it needs? And then get in your natural, try and create what it needs. What does it need? There is the deepest part of me, and this is what I've gone through in the last couple of weeks, and I'll be totally open and vulnerable with you because I love you. You're part of me, and you would go through the same thing, I'm assuming. Maybe you wouldn't, I don't know. But the question that we'll ask you that takes you into the deepest darkness is, does it matter? If everything that I ever create is going to be destroyed, then does it matter if I create anything? And that's how you just fall out of creation, though. You just fall into darkness. But you generally don't want to be there for very long, because you want to, every good memory that you had, and I'm sure you're just like me, is the time you spent with the people around you, that where you created something and had a fun time together. And yeah, created something new. Especially if you had created something new that brought people together. That's the most fulfilling thing. Because the thing that's going to want to bring everybody together is getting in touch with themselves, and so that everyone feels like they're co-creating with their environment. You don't feel like you're co-creating if you go to work for big business. Right? It's a parasitic thought form. It's based on something external. It's not based on does my heart want to create with the people around me? And at the same time, balance that with what they need. Because, until we become our own source purely, then you'll always be exchanging energy. And you want to exchange energy with the people around you anyway, even if you were that. Because then it's really magical. Higher dimensional states. So we can get into why it's a spiritual warfare, and people call it spiritual warfare when you're moving through, but you're actually just growing back together. So there's always something pulling you in both directions, something magnetic with each other, which kind of has a balancing effect, but there's a gradual gravity towards the center with one another. And it's out of necessity, because that's how you create more expansive children, when two people come together and they bring all that information from both sides and then create something new. We always want our children to become greater than we are, and they will be. But in higher dimensional states, so if our awareness, let's say our awareness is our heart, and we're centered in a state where things slow down and become just dark and dark, because we can see into darkness here from this plane. There are certain planes, when you get higher, closer to source, you won't be able to see that far into darkness. And that's why we come back here, to experience the opposite. Because unless you feel the other side, heaven isn't heaven without hell, and hell isn't hell without heaven. Both have to exist at the same time for there to be either. Because there's no what's the word I'm trying to come up with? There's no opposite. That's not the right word. There's no There's no oscillation between highs and lows. There's no plenty of information to gather, because you forget what it's like to be in darkness when you're already in the light. If you're in the light for too long, so you have to oscillate back and forth. And that's kind of what creates, the infinite path back to the heart, is when you can oscillate between, because you're always going to be oscillating. If you didn't, then everything grows old and tired. So you'll always be really re-experiencing yourself in an infinite number of ways. And sometimes it can be painful. But you find out that you wanted to experience the pain when you're in a place of no pain. Yeah. If it exists, it's in pain, because in a way it's separate from itself. So there's some level of pain. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I'm not going to keep talking about this. It was just something. I might as well just get on here and start talking every day. I mean, what else do I got to do? I'm working with somebody else on something else, and the other project. Ideally, so back to what I was saying before I go. What would it look like when we do come together? Well, you would follow the laws of nature, like I talked about, the rules of nature, that everything grows according to itself, and then treat each other equally. Treat your neighbors yourself. And trade time. A solid community would just all spend the same amount of time working towards the needs of the community. And then, I mean, we can go into what that would look like, but it's already there. It's already a place that we are at. It's not some place in the future. If everything is always is happening right now, you are existing in everywhere at the same time. You're just not aware of it. And that's the process that we go through, is becoming more aware of everything. And this is why, so I'll leave you guys with this thing. Don't try to not remember the past, because that will cause its own dysfunction. Learn from the past, and it shouldn't cause harm, because if somebody was projecting harm onto somebody else and you took it personally, don't. They didn't know what they were doing any more than a bug knows that it's living off the back of a giant mosquito or whatever. Doesn't know. And the not knowing actually is what makes us all children. And it becomes a much easier time being a child. And why would a father ever blame their child for something that they did not know? And that's why everything is always welcome to come back to the middle. Love you guys. Have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you on the next one.